Many serious boating accidents don't happen crossing wild oceans. They happen at anchor. The wind shifts or strengthens, the current changes, and sometimes one anchor just isn't enough. So in this video, we're looking at how we can make an anchorage more secure using two anchors, the different ways they can be deployed, and then we'll show you exactly how we set up our own system.
We reinforce our anchor line.
Why?
Because here there is often a very strong wind and one anchor sometimes is not enough.
Sometimes the goal is simply to reduce the amount the boat can swing. Sometimes we're trying to increase the holding capacity of the system, and sometimes we're using extra weight in the road to keep the pull on the main anchor as horizontal as possible. So it's important to understand that two anchors doesn't describe just one technique. And if you'd like to keep a copy of all this information to refer back to later, we've also put together a leaflet covering everything we've discussed in this video, the different setups, deployment, scope, equipment, and the principles behind it. It's available through a link in the description if you'd like to keep a copy on board as a reference.
There is a many different systems.
There are a few different ways to use two anchors, depending on what you're trying to achieve. The first is tandem anchoring, where the two anchors are connected in series on the same road. The second uses another anchor connected to the main road in a different arrangement. And the third uses an anchor as an additional weight in the road. And finally, you can use two completely independent anchor lines. The important thing is that each arrangement behaves differently, so let's look at them one at a time.
On the same line of chain there is a three system. One is what in Latino we say appennellare, I mean connect on the head of the anchor another chain, another anchor, or if you don't have a chain, directly one anchor. Less efficient but also good.
The first method is usually called tandem anchoring. The two anchors are connected in series, one behind the other on the same road. The idea is that the first anchor sets and takes the initial load, while the second anchor is further down the same line.
You have to before making hold the first anchor by towing and reverse. You distribute a little bit quantity of chain. You tow, you sure the first anchor start to dig in.
The important part is the setting sequence. First, you give the first anchor enough road to allow it to set properly. Then you pull back gently and progressively to make sure it has dug in and is holding. Only once the first anchor is established do you deploy the second section of the road and set the second anchor.
After you release, you distend the second parts of chain up to when there is the second anchor. The second anchor you distribute to another portion of chain like the depth by 2 times the depth is 3 times the depth in total. And after you start to tow moderate the whole line system like this. The two anchors they dig in, and after you increase, you continue to add force and portion of tow for be sure that they continue to dig more in all together.
Once both anchors are on the bottom, the load is increased progressively rather than hitting the system with a sudden maximum load. That gives each anchor a chance to establish itself in the seabed. For our particular setup, Timo first pays out about 3 times the water depth in chain before he begins to apply a moderate pull. 3 times the depth is the point where he starts loading the system. It isn't the maximum amount of chain we use, and it isn't a universal scope recommendation. We continue to pay out more chain as needed. In general, scope is the ratio between the length of the road deployed and depth of water, measured from the bow attachment point down to the seabed.
The second system, on the principal line of chain, you connect another piece of chain with another anchor, and me I like when the two pieces of chain in the end they have the same proportion. They have a two line of anchor.
The second arrangement Timo described is another way of putting two anchors into the same overall system. The geometry is different from the simple tandem anchoring, and the way the anchors are deployed matters.
I put in the water by dinghy like this. I'm sure the two anchors they are in distance position between, because more you pull, more they try to dig in and coming close.
The reason Timo uses the dinghy here is to position the second anchor rather than simply dropping it directly from the bow. The aim is to get the two anchors established at the intended positions before progressively loading the system.
You try to pull on the direction to the strong wind you know or go to coming. Allora you put one on the water, the second one, you distribute the two pieces of chain up to where they joint, they are the first chain, 3 times the portion of the depth, and after moderate and moderate pull, increase, but up to when you are sure your two anchors, they hold properly all together.
Again, the important principle is progressive loading. We don't immediately apply maximum force. We gradually increase the load and watch how the system behaves, making sure both anchors are holding. Timo always talks about 3 times the depth because that's really the minimum scope we want to reach before the anchor can properly dig in and start working. But 3 times isn't where we stop. Once the anchor is set, we keep paying out chain until we reach at least 5 times the depth, and in stronger conditions, we'll put out even more.
Another system is in the same line of chain. You want to be sure the portion of chain on the ground, this slide on the ground, is heavy enough to don't be lifted from the toe.
The third method is slightly different. Here, the second anchor is not simply being used as another independent anchor in the same way. Its weight also becomes part of the road system. The additional weight helps keep more of the chain down on the seabed. The important difference is where the second anchor is attached. In the tandem system, the second anchor is attached to the recovery or tripping point on the first anchor. This puts the 2 anchors in line, so both anchors can work as anchors and share the load. In this system, the second anchor is attached at the main chain or road attachment point instead. Because of the way it's connected, the second anchor isn't necessarily being pulled in the direction needed for it to dig in and work as a normal anchor. Instead, we're mainly using its weight to help keep the chain down on the seabed. That helps keep the pull on the main anchor more horizontal, which can help the anchor work more effectively. So in this case, the second anchor is being used primarily as weight in the road rather than as a second working anchor.
How can we increase the force of this piece of chain for stay down on the ground? We connect one anchor after one portion che is 1.5 the depth, for example, or minimum 1.5 minimum, 2 times the depth is the minimum, is the correct quantity. We connect another anchor like this. Not only this anchor go to hold, but also is heavy because is a proportionate to the dimension of the boat, and you have the line on the ground continue to keep the toe horizontal and give the maximum efficiency to the anchor. That's the three system. The whole other system is 2 different line of chain with the 2 anchor, and there is another word. There is a many different system we can do it by mix chain and rope.
The other major approach is to use 2 completely separate anchor lines. Instead of putting both anchors in series on one road, each anchor has its own road. This can be useful when the main objective is to control the boat's movement or reduce the swinging circle. And that's really the point. There isn't just one single 2 anchor system. There are different ways of combining anchors, chain, and rope, depending on the bottom, the wind, the current, the space available, and what you're actually trying to achieve.
First thing, I want to show you how can we prepare the boat quite well for strong wind. All halyard is far away from the mast and tight on the deck in the correct attachment point. That's mean no halyard chafing and banging the mast and reduce the noise, but also the damaging of the hardware and rope.
Before we deploy the second anchor, we prepare the boat for the conditions. Loose halyards are secured away from the mast to reduce noise, movement, and chafe.
The staysail is tight. The staysail is in the new bags, sewing from Timo, honestly. And now we have ready the moorings for bringing back the second anchor. Is on the end of the line where there is the other piece of chain, another anchor, and after there is a 12-meter rope, big diameter, because we wanna be sure that if we wanna pull up with the 1 winch, we can use this rope for tow up 1 ton, something like that. This rope is strong enough. It's normally polyester, but it's with the core rope in the anti-chafing.
For retrieving and handling the second anchor, we've prepared a separate strong line. The idea is to have a controlled way of handling the anchor without relying on someone manually lifting a heavy anchor over the bow.
There is 1 floater, 1 moorings, go to signal the position of our anchor. Here we have the second anchor with attached the grippiale, we call it in sailor language Latino, in Italian. And that is the point in 1 CQR where you have to attach your lifting anchor point. And is the opposite side of the anchor.
This is the lifting or retrieval point on the anchor. Timo is using it so the anchor can be handled from the safer direction when we bring it back on board.
Unfortunately, we don't have one full piece of chain. It's not very long, honestly, but it's long enough. Here we have a 3-meter chain after the second anchor. We connect the two pieces of chain with the shackle. One is correct diameter. The diameter of the pin of the shackle have to be the same diameter of the rod of the chain. This is 10mm chain, like the chain of the main anchor, and the pin on the first shackle in steel is at the correct size.
This is one place where I want to be very clear that this is our actual setup, not a recommendation to copy. We have a section of chain connecting to the second anchor, and the connections are secured with shackles and additional lashing. The size, strength, and compatibility of every component in an anchor system matter because the loads can become very high.
The second one is a stainless steel, is a lot of less strong, but all is secure with many lashing of Spectra skinny rope. We ain't quite sure, don't go to break. Also the shackle tied the chain to the anchor is secure with another skinny Spectra rope for be sure the pin don't start to spinning and go out.
Timo is deliberately showing the safety measures we've added to these connections. The extra lashings are there to prevent the shackle pin from backing out.
I think everything is ready. We can hoist the main anchor, connect the second chain line to the head of the first anchor, relaunch on the water the second anchor, try to be sure touch the ground. We distribute the chain, we dispose the two anchor on the ground, plus the 3 times the depth, and after we make in tow and we see how much strong can hold.
So let's go through the actual deployment step by step. First, we hoist or retrieve the main anchor so we can attach the second anchor system. Then we connect the second section of the chain to the first anchor. The second anchor is lowered into the water in a controlled way. Once it's on the bottom, we pay out the rod and position the system. And then we progressively load the system to make sure the anchors are properly set.
This rope on the end is also helpful for relaunch the anchor on the water without a throw, because if I throw, I risk to damage badly my bow.
The important thing here is that we're controlling the deployment rather than simply throwing a heavy anchor over the bow.
How can you guarantee it's going to land face down? Or what can you do to help it land face down?
Because we move the boat. When we move the boat,
It moves.
the anchor disposes.
You can't guarantee that an anchor will land perfectly oriented every single time. What you can do is allow the anchor to settle, then apply a controlled pull in the intended direction.
Boom! Start to dig in the boat anchor.
As the anchor moves across the seabed, its design should allow it to orient and dig in. The important thing is to verify the set rather than simply assuming that because the anchor is on the bottom, it's holding.
Like every kind of anchor, the anchor work for form.
Before we look at the deployment itself, it helps to understand what the anchor is actually doing when it sets. With an anchor like ours, a CQR or plow type anchor, the shape is designed so that when the road pulls it along the seabed, the anchor can orientate itself and the flukes can dig in. As the anchor moves across the seabed, it rotates into position and begins to bury itself. As the load increases, the anchor digs deeper and develops its holding power. That's why the direction and angle of the pull matter, and why we don't simply assume that an anchor is holding because it's sitting on the bottom. One thing that's important to remember is that the boat doesn't always point directly into the wind. Wind and current can affect different directions, and whichever force is dominant can determine how the boat lies at anchor. That's one reason why 2 anchor systems can be useful in particular anchorages. They can change how much the boat is able to swing as conditions change. With a single anchor, the boat can swing through a large circle as the wind changes. The 2 anchor arrangement can resist that movement depending on how the anchors are positioned. But that doesn't mean 2 anchors automatically make an anchorage safer. The system has to be appropriate for the conditions, the seabed, the boat, and the amount of room available.
Okay, I have my point of view. I am always on the line between the big badge and the white super yacht, and I have the big tower on the stern. Okay, straight rudder, straight on.
This is one of the simplest and most useful checks we can make. We use objects around us as reference points. If those bearings change unexpectedly, it can tell us that the boat has moved. You can also use GPS or an anchor alarm as another layer of monitoring, but visual bearings are a very useful backup. With both anchors down, we gradually increase the load. We're watching the boat, the road, and our position while we do this.
Reverse minimum. Now we already start to distend the chain in the vector of the wind now.
Okay, so in the end, we changed the floating setup because it was all twisted.
Now slowly, slowly.
If the system is holding, the boat should settle into a consistent position relative to the wind and current.
We do alternation of release and pull. Like this we start to watch, bang in the chain, boom. Boom. Start to dig in, boom, anchor. I'm ready 60 meter. 60 meter for 10 meter depth is a lot, quindi we can start to hard,
Pull.
pull hard, increase little bit. That is a good opportunity for see our chain locker. Now we are on the end of the chain. We have a 100-meter chain down. Now we release another 5 after we have to attach the rope.
Okay, so that's like close to 100 meters, maybe even a bit more. And we're in like 10 meters of water roughly.
Anchorage prepare for everything. This is the anchorage system prepare for the worst situation. Watch, we still are in tension with the engine, quindi we continue to dig in. We attach the snubber rope. Our snubber rope is attached on the chain plate to the tie down of the bowsprit. It's very low, it's very structural point, but we not finish to secure. We release. We have to be sure for intention the snubber. Put all color, red, blue, and yellow.
At the end of the chain.
Two time, that is still painting because we never give so much chain.
Okay, but that is at the end of the chain, you're saying?
Yeah.
Look, we can see where the anchor was.
Watch on the water, you can see the snubber is in tension and the chain is vertical down. That means we are really slack now.
And an additional safety line. Well done.
It's in tension just with the weight because I want the windlass don't work. We do the knots for the Prusik, the typical knots for the anchor. This one never slippery. Voila. Okay, now this one tight, but not in tension, like this don't work.
And before we leave the boat, we check the connections one more time. Every shackle, chain, connection, lashing, and line is part of the same system, so the weakest component can become the limiting factor.
So now we're safe for the captain to leave us for a few days.
So to recap, tandem anchors put 2 anchors in series on one road. Other arrangements can use 2 anchors in different positions on the same overall system. An additional anchor could also be used partly as weight to help keep the road down. And 2 completely separate anchor lines can be used when the goal is to control the boat swinging or respond to conditions. There isn't one perfect method for every situation. The right choice depends on the boat, the anchors, the road, the seabed, the wind, the current, and the space available. And for us, the most important part is not just putting 2 anchors in the water, it's making sure they're actually holding.
Watch, bang in the chain, boom.
And that's it for this episode. I hope this has helped explain some of the different ways you can use 2 anchors and why the setup and the way the anchors are connected really matters. If you found the video useful and you'd like to support our journey, there are a few ways you can do that. You can join us on Patreon, support us through Coffee, or make a contribution through PayPal. I'll put all the links in the description below. We've also put together a little 2 anchor systems guide with all of the diagrams and the different setups we've talked about in this video. It's free for our Patreons, and if you're not a Patreon, you can also download it for a very small fee. There's a link in the description if you'd like a copy. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Joanna, wanna pose the question. What we do it?
What we do it? No, that's not the question I would pose.
What fact do we do it?
No. What we do it?
What we do?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? That's mean che no one island. No one island.
Halliard.
No one alien.
No Halliard. No Halliard.
I think everything is ready.
Start again.
I think everything is ready.
What was that about?
No, I'm joking because many YouTubers they do all Allora, I'm Italian, I can use the hand very well. Quindi I think everything is ready. Anzi, I repeat.